Well, the High Court in Johannesburg has reserved judgment in President Cyril Ramaphosa's urgent application to interdict the private prosecution bid by his predecessor, former President Jacob Zuma. Ramaphosa filed papers to interdict Zuma from taking further steps to have him privately prosecuted. Ramaphosa is also requesting the court to excuse him from appearing before it on the 19th of this month, as the summons have ordered. Zuma has accused Ramaphosa of contravening the National Prosecuting Act regarding the disclosure of the former president's medical records by prosecutor advocate Billy Downer and journalist Karen Moon. President Cyril Ramaphosa's counsel has argued that the private prosecution bid launched against his client is not in the public interest. Advocate Jacob Zuma has countered the former president's Jacob Zuma's argument and says his appearance in criminal court could give effect to the ANC's step-aside resolution. Manechi says that this would also affect his position as head of the state. All right, now joining me in studio is SABC news reporter Canny Maphanga, who has been tracking court proceedings for us. A very good afternoon to you, Canny. All right, let's get to the gist of it then. I want to talk about the crux of the matter here, and I think maybe we're taking a step forward, but I think it's important for all that we are discussing. What exactly does former President Jacob Zuma want for the President Cyril Ramaphosa to be prosecuted for? I think maybe if we can start there.
Okay, so if we're dealing with the private prosecution matter flow, there is one theme. It's the alleged disclosure of the health records of a former president. But we are dealing with an alleged perpetrator, an alleged accomplice, and an accessory after the fact. So the third category is where President Ramaphosa would allegedly fall under. That's what the former president is trying to privately prosecute him for.
Yeah.
So if we backtrack to August of 2021, the former president wrote to President Ramaphosa stating that he needed some form of intervention. We understand that he wanted him to establish an investigation, an inquiry, or commission of sorts into the alleged conduct of advocate Billy Downer, because it's provided a risk to the NPA as an institution and by extension the criminal justice system as a whole. Mm-hmm. The president in response decided to refer the matter to the Minister of Justice in order for it to be referred to the LPC. That was the remedy that they gave to the former president.
Yeah. So it's not correct to say the president completely ignored?
Yes, it's not correct to say that. He did attempt to act, and it appears that that option was due to the fact that in the past the NPA has been subject to political interference. So I think maybe the reasoning behind that could have been that the president can't necessarily take action against individuals such as the prosecutor or the journalist in question. So he referred it to the appropriate people that should have dealt with the matter. And we understand that because nothing happened, there was a failure to act in this matter, and that is why those summons were served. And there's been questions around why the incident in August or rather the first complaint in August of 2021 only led to summons a day before the conference. Mm-hmm. The explanation behind that by the foundation is that that was when they got the nulli prosecutor certificates issued. Yeah.
Well, speaking about the nulli prosecutor certificates, then we had heard the president's legal team saying that there is no certificate in his name, in the president's name, but we're hearing something different indeed. I understand there's another nulli prosecutor. The second one does indeed apply to the president. Can you explain, what took place in court and what the explanation there really is?
Okay, so the president's lawyers are arguing that his rights would be gravely infringed on because he would be hauled before a criminal court off of a process that was not followed constitutionally, i.e. it was not authorized by the NPA. But Advocate Darlene Botha on behalf of the former president is saying that is incorrect. Yes, the first certificate was issued in the name of Advocate Billy Downer, but he refers to then the second certificate that you've all seen, which doesn't have a name but does have that phrase that kind of broadens the scope with regards to who was named in the docket. Now remember, there was a statement by the NPA stating that when they issued the certificates, there was no mention of President Ramaphosa, but in court, Advocate Botha read out the docket referring to the president's name. So they're saying that on that basis, it was issued out correctly. And by virtue of them even being there to set aside, or Part A, get an interim interdict, and then if that is granted, get to Part B, which is setting aside the summons, means that there is something to answer to on the 19th of January.
All right, let's come back to today's legal proceedings. Then, of course, this is all about the urgent interdict, and there's a lot that's been said about, you know, the urgency of the case. Was the president's legal team able to, and of course there's different areas with which you must be able to prove that this indeed is an urgent matter. What did the president's legal team actually put forward as their argument as to why this was actually such an urgent matter that had to be dealt with differently by the courts?
Well, today we were dealing with Part A of the application, which deals essentially with urgency. So they are advancing the number one contention is that I've stated before. The number one ground is that the president would be hauled before the criminal courts on summons that were not constitutionally valid according to his legal team. He's also expressing that there isn't any other remedy available for them. Remember, there was a bit of an exchange in the beginning when those summons were first issued. They refused to withdraw, and now the president has been forced to come to the court to seek that relief. So those are the kind of grounds that they're looking at, that they'll be suffering irreparable harm. As the head of state, he loses his prima facie rights to freedom of movement, to perform his duties, and by extension, the nation will also suffer from abuse of processes from the former president if this private prosecution bid is allowed to continue.
All right, Canny, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for that. Canny Maphanga, very closely following this particular story for us.